The following is a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
Remember a simpler time when it was okay to be weird, have fun, and think for yourself?
Well, those days are over. The art of conversation itself is dead. Sacrificed on the altar of divide and conquer and disguised as political correctness and spared feelings. I believe that unity can only come from truth, and that the only way to find truth is by exploring and embracing our valuable differences and having civil, open-minded, and uncomfortable discourse. Conspiracies, politics, religion, and all the taboo topics your family just praise you don't bring up around the Thanksgiving dinner table. We are here to literally change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. So if you're easily offended, put your big girl panties on and buckle up, Buttercup, because you chose to be here. I'm Dan Smots, you are the power, and this is The System Is Down.
That's right, it is The System Is Down. This is the place where you come when you are looking to find truth, to seek truth, and do so in all the uncomfortable manners, in the most fun, and sometimes, you know, offensive manners. This is The System Is Down. If you're new here, welcome to the show, and go find the person who invited you. Give him a big hug and a kiss from me and from you, because I appreciate you being here, and because you're going to enjoy it. Enough with the music. I appreciate you being here, and you're going to enjoy it for sure, because we have today a very special guest. Miss Angela McArdle will be with us shortly. Before we get into that, I got to remind you guys about our main number one sponsor, which is, of course, y'all. All you guys in the Downers Club, people like Ellen Gomez, Jack Casey, Rick Duran, Javari, Edward Middlebrook, Mark Clare, Kyle Evans, Craig DaCosta. My reading skills aren't what they used to be. So, the rest of you, if you want to hear your name, just go watch the video, say it out loud as it passes, and pretend like you're getting the special treatment that the rest of these people got. But if you want your name on that list, go sign up for the Downers Club at patreon.com/thesystemisdown, and you'll get more weird, more raw, more offensive, more weekly content, bonus episodes of the show every single week. Patreon.com/thesystemisdown. Also, I have to remind you guys about our other sponsor, which is Kratom from freeounceofkratom.com. Where's my overlay? freeounceofkratom.com from Brave Botanicals. My Brave Botanicals. You can get your Kratom, and you can have the happy glow that I will have as this kicks in, this Kratom that I'm drinking right now. Angela, have you ever tried Kratom?
Absolutely. I used to use it all the time.
Nice. What are your thoughts?
I love Kratom. I have Crohn's disease, and when I was in the middle of a really bad flare for about 1.5 years, I used Kratom instead of having to rely on opioids, and it was just fantastic, and I had no problem getting off of it once I healed up.
Awesome. That was our guest announcer for our sponsor that didn't know it was coming. I like to always ask especially the libertarians, because I know they've all tried it anyway. But free ounce of Kratom, you can try it right now. Promo code TSID, and you'll get 5% off your entire order. They also have Delta THC. My wife and I tried it the other day. I recommend it. freeounceofkratom.com. Now, to what you're here for, which is, of course, my very special guest, Miss Angela McArdle. Angela, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Now, you are I am terrible at remembering or even understanding what all the different levels of the beast are that are the Libertarian Party. So I'll let you explain all the things you've done, give some of your background, and where you're at now.
It's like levels, like Kramer and Seinfeld. So I chair the Libertarian Party of Los Angeles County. I am also on the California Executive Committee for the Libertarian Party of California, and I chair and organize for the Mises Caucus of California. We have our own state-level PAC, and I also obviously organize for the National Caucus, and I'm on their board of directors. So I am very busy with libertarian stuff.
Absolutely. What was it that got you into, like, were you raised around libertarianism like the great noble Nick Sarwark was? First generation libertarian?
No. No, if only I could be that pure, just true of heart.
Yes.
I was raised in a typical conservative Christian home. I grew up in Texas, and I got red pilled on libertarianism after reading The Creature from Jekyll Island by G. Edward Griffith. It was really the Federal Reserve that freaked me out and opened my eyes as to how horrible our government is.
Yeah. Now, have to ask, because Creature from Jekyll Island is no small undertaking. What made you interested in even exploring that depth? Because I haven't. I have friends that have, but I'm not much of a reader myself.
Well, I work in litigation, and I also read California Code of Civil Procedure in my spare time. So it doesn't matter how boring and dry and tedious something is, I'll dig into it. I don't even remember how I came across the book. I think a friend might have given it to me in a whole bunch of books. I have some friends where we trade books back and forth, like just big, massive stacks of books, legal books, liberty books, anything about U.S. history.
Yeah.
And I think I came across it one day while I was going through my book collection and was like, oh, I need to read this. And I did. And it just completely blew my mind and traumatized me. I was just psychologically traumatized in a very good way, good way.
As it should be. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what happened. I think that's how it went down.
So you say that you were raised more like conservative, Republican-ish, which I was the same. And it is the story of many libertarians, whether some libertarians like to believe it or not. But how did that go? Like, were your parents like super into politics at all, or was that more just, we were born in a certain state around certain people, so we thought a certain way, or were they actually involved in politics like you are?
My dad was not involved in politics, but we spent a whole lot of time talking about politics and watching every kind of political show you could imagine. So I remember being like 7 years old and obsessively watching Crossfire, being like, yeah, I'm participating. I know what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
And being really active in straw polls for elections in elementary school and junior high. So I thought I was very, very, very awake and with it politically as a 9-year-old.
Yeah, and I'm sure you were compared to other 9-year-olds. But so, like, now before we go too much further, you're now running for the chair of the LP National, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I have to ask that after this interview, you do not quit your campaign like Mark Whitney did and Josh Smith did the last time he was on. Like, it seems like people come on this show, they talk to me, we have a grand old time, good chat, and then before I can even put out their episode, they're like, yeah, all that's outdated already, and I'm not running anymore. So I don't want to get the reputation, so hang in there, is all I ask.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. We'll be good.
Good. So I'll ask you the same thing I asked Josh when I had him on when he was still running. Rest in peace, Josh. Why? Why do you want to run? I went to the national convention this last year. I've seen the shit show. I've seen, like, respect where it's due. Nick Sarwark at least was able to keep that place from lighting on fire sometimes, and even though he was sometimes stoking it. But why do you think that you are the person for this job, and why do you want to do it? How masochistic are you?
I'm extremely masochistic. So
all right.
You're qualified. Yes. Here's what it boils down to. I can do it. I think I'm the most qualified, willing person at this point. So I should do it. Mm-hmm. It's, I really subscribe to the Jordan Peterson philosophy that if you want to find meaning and fulfillment in life, you need to go out and find the biggest burden that you can possibly shoulder and carry it as far as you can. And that's what I see with LP National. I think it's an excellent platform and tool to get out the message of liberty. I think it's been grossly mismanaged, and it's never had like a really solid plan, infrastructure, no market research to date. And so that's why I think it's been historically grossly underutilized, and we can do something very dramatically different in a very good way. We just need to actually do it.
Yeah. And what is the issue that drove you to this point? Like, we know that there's been some mixed messaging, to say the least, from LP National, but was there like one straw that broke the camel's back where you're like, this is unacceptable, I need to take up the mantle?
Oh yeah, it was Nationals' refusal and, absolute failure to speak out against the lockdowns.
Okay.
I announced really early. I understand people thought that was really weird, but it's because I saw the LP hemorrhaging and people saying, I'll never join that organization now. I'm going to turn in my membership. I want a refund. I'm never going to be a part of the Libertarian Party again if they can't speak out on basic liberty issues.
Yeah.
So I felt that I should say, hey, okay, well, hold on. What if I run in 2022 and we completely clean this up and we start taking advice from small L libertarians who refuse to join the party and we just turn it around dramatically? People said, okay, do that and then I'll rejoin. Or if you pledge to do that, then I won't drop out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we're at.
Gotcha. Yeah, these the lockdowns, I mean, it's such a divisive topic, and there's so many people in the party that are in positions of power who did not, I feel like, totally bungled this, in my opinion. Obviously, I'm not the only person to say so. It's not an original idea that I had, but like, I don't know. I haven't even been involved in the party for more than a few years. I was an observer before that, and yeah, I didn't know all the infighting and the divisiveness and the division within the party to the extreme that I did after working on the campaign with Joe and Spike. But where does this come from? As somebody coming into it, for me, I was like, oh, you're a libertarian? That probably means that you're great. You agree with me on this issue and that, like, not specific issues necessarily, but things like the lockdown should be pretty obvious. That we don't need the government to tell people to stay in their homes. We don't need, mandated, vaccines are coming, but mandated like lockdowns and stuff like that. Why is there this disconnect on that type of messaging?
Well, we've had people who have been in positions of authority in the party for the last at least 6 years, pushing a woke agenda and chasing the culture of the left instead of reflecting libertarian culture. So now we've gotten to the point where LP National has very low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. They're embarrassed to be libertarians. They're embarrassed to speak out about libertarian issues or express libertarian views. All they want to do is parrot, see, we're exactly the same. We're just like you. We want the same things, to anyone on the left, to any leftist talking point. Mm-hmm. Just try to spin it as libertarian, and that's not libertarian. Right. So that's what happened with the lockdowns. They were really afraid of offending people. So they said, we'll just say nothing. We'll say nothing for a year.
Yeah, it seemed like a pretty easy one to hit, but it is what it is. So what would your messaging have been in that situation? Like if you had to condense it down to a tweet or two to at the very beginning, when we thought that this might still be something that would, wipe out half the country or something like that, would you have stuck to the message of no lockdowns, or what would your messaging have been at that point?
Oh, absolutely. We oppose lockdowns. We support the free movement of peaceful people across the country, across borders, across whatever you want to call it. This is just a very basic civil liberty. It's a really clear line in the sand. We don't put people on forcible house arrest. Mm-hmm. And there's all kinds of ways that you can wrap it in compassion. The California Mises Caucus media team has done some really good video interviews with small business owners whose livelihoods were destroyed. We have a documentary coming out that'll be hitting hopefully major distribution channels within the next few months. It's not aggressive in your face. We don't care about sick people or poor people kind of messaging. It just shows this is the other side of lockdowns, and this is why this should be illegal. Everyone should have a personal choice. Yeah. I think expressing personal choice and personal freedom is always the way to go. It's always the way to go. And you can find compassionate ways to do it, and you can find aggressive, anti-authoritarian ways to do it. You just need a good messenger to read the room and be able to know how to get that message out.
Yeah. So why do you hate everyone's grandmas, Angela? Be honest.
Well, I hate grandmas, and I want everyone to die. Because I'm a selfish libertarian and so I worship Ayn Rand.
That's right.
Yes, and the
Screw
Koch
the
brothers.
roads and kill everyone. Yep. Let them all die.
Yep. Nukes. I just want to sell nukes and heroin to children.
Amen.
And that's why I'm a libertarian.
Preach. So, What are some of the other like big issues? I mean, there's the obvious ones, and I would like to touch on some of them, like the BLM stuff and the rioting and that type of thing, because there's certainly two libertarian sides there. There's we have to be anti-cop people who say that we have to seem to be pro-riot because they're anti-cop. But then there's the other side saying that we have to be, or we can still be anti-cop but also anti-riot. Like they act like, or the lefty libertarian types seem to think that anybody who doesn't want stores burning down loves cops. Is there another way to look at this than that?
I feel like there's got to be another way, right?
You would think.
Like if you respect private property, you can say, hey, don't torch someone's store.
Yeah.
Don't burn down someone's livelihood. I feel like that's not a far right position to take. I think that's a very principled libertarian position to take.
You would think that would be an everybody, like left, right, middle, libertarian, everybody should be able to agree on that. Like that's just common courtesy. I mean, the libertarian principle is common courtesy, but I don't know. Burning down things, I don't understand how this is acceptable for the left even, but sorry, I interrupted.
That's really where we're at. That's where we're at in the Libertarian Party, is that a small but vocal chunk of people is afraid to speak out against burning down someone's store.
Yeah.
It's not a good place to be. We need to get into a better place with messaging.
Yeah. So how would you handle that type of messaging, knowing that it's like, would you address the racial side of this stuff? Would you get into that type of thing, or would you make it more just, hey, rioting is bad, plain and simple, don't care what your reason is?
I think rioting is bad, regardless of what your skin color is. I think it's always wrong to burn down someone else's business or home or building or empty building or warehouse, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
I think we don't have to draw, we shouldn't let ourselves get race baited all the time. The LP is so sensitive about it. We feel that we have to speak out on every racial issue instead of just sort of deftly navigating around it and saying, hey, it doesn't matter what your race is, stop rioting, don't burn stuff down. This is unacceptable.
Additionally, it doesn't matter what your race is. If a cop's shooting you, we are opposed to that. So
absolutely. We need to be able to speak out when the cops shoot white people, just like we speak out when the cops shoot black people, which is, I'm not really pro-cop. I'm trying to, how do I say this? I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that ultimately we want people who are in law enforcement to realize the error of their ways and become libertarian or quit their jobs or whatever. We need to do outreach to them at some level. I don't have that down all the way, but I recognize that it's something we need to do. However, at the same time, we shouldn't be worried about offending police officers when we say stop shooting people, stop killing people. Right. I think we just need to be really aggressive and direct about that.
Absolutely. And what is your stance on the policing situation? Are you among the, obviously reform, we all agree on that, but do you go to the extreme of like all police should be privatized or that type of thing? Or is it more just about the reform?
Oh, I'd love to see all police get privatized. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to, it's a journey to getting there.
Right.
So reform is a step in the right direction. So I definitely support reform. I'm not sure that I support removing police and replacing them with social workers who would just call the cops on you if you didn't comply with them, though. Right. So I feel like the sort of needs to be ironed out a little bit what defund the police means. I'm not sure that that's been perfectly thought out.
Yeah, in an active shooting, you can't really do too much talking unless you're very quick at it. But yeah, and of course, when that fails, you've just got a dead person, and the cops are still showing up anyway. So just cut out the middleman at that point. But
right.
So on that topic of like police reform or police abolition, switch to privatized, what prevents the next town over from overtaking your town because they disagree with the way you, like, maybe you live next to a town of lefties and you're in a Republican community and they've got their army, their militia built up larger than yours. What's stopping them from saying this is our town now and you can't stop us?
I'm trying to think when the last time a town of leftists tried to take over a town of Republicans. I'm not sure if we're actually going to come into a situation like that. I think that people
We're libertarians.
naturally
We work in extreme
Right.
hypotheticals.
Right. I think people naturally segregate themselves as much as they can when they're allowed to. I think actually the government has made it more difficult for people to segregate themselves, but they're helping us along the way now when we're seeing certain states try to roll out mandatory vaccination laws and perpetual mask ordinances.
Mhm.
So I don't worry too much about lefty militias taking over. There don't seem to be very many of them. Most of my former friends on the left who are screaming, "I hope you die, you murderous COVID denier," they're all afraid to leave their homes.
Remember
So,
when the
you
left
know.
was a bunch of hippies, like pushing
Yeah.
for peace and what happened? Where did
I
we go
don't
wrong?
understand. I don't know. It's like they adopted the worst traits of the neocon right.
Yeah, absolutely.
They've become like bloodthirsty and propagandized at the national level. It's really creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're working with the Mises Caucus. You've got their endorsement and everything, which is great. What is your stance on the? I assume you're for, but what is your stance on the libertarian insurrection of the Libertarian Party, or as some would call it, the takeover?
The takeover. Well, I haven't painted myself half blue and put on the horns yet,
Okay.
but I think that the takeover is really important. I get that it's polarizing language. You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube.
Yeah.
And so when I talk about the takeover, I discuss it in the context of I see someone who's really struggling with something. Maybe they're burned out, exhausted, or they're ill-equipped to do the job. So I think, hey, why don't you let me take that over for you for a little bit? And let me see if I can help you out. That's really what the takeover is for me. It's kind of Jesus take the wheel.
Right. That's what I was going to say. It's like we've been in the passenger seat watching you drive off a cliff. Now we're just reaching over and grabbing the wheel. You're welcome to stay there and hang out, but we'd just like to, move away from that cliff a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, and it's a takeover, not a purge. It doesn't mean people are getting kicked out. It just means we're going to see a very different tone in leadership and a different tone in messaging. I think that is something that's really good. There's a lot of other things that the National Party really needs help with too.
Yeah.
Like fundraising, infrastructure, membership growth.
Yep.
There's a ton. There's a lot of things.
Absolutely. What would you do differently as far as attracting membership growth for the party?
So one of the things that the Mises Caucus has been good at, that National Party historically has not been good at, is taking criticism from small L libertarians. So small L libertarians say, I'm tired of being on the receiving end of your super woke messaging and making me feel like I'm a racist for not doing enough. I'm tired of all of the message being slanted in one direction politically. Why can't you be more libertarian? Okay, so criticism received, acknowledged, it's a problem. I would like to change that. If we get that changed, will you join the LP? A lot of libertarians are like, yes, actually, I would. If you can change that part of the organization's culture, I'll join. So there you go. Like, that will greatly increase membership. We'll just get the low-hanging fruit, which is other libertarians who are telling us exactly what we need to do in order to make it a viable organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And coincidentally, it seems like a lot of the little L libertarians who weren't in the party a year or two ago, who are now, it seems like they're the ones that have a lot more people watching their shows, listening to their podcasts, going to their events. Am I wrong on that? Because again, I'm still pretty new here.
You're right. It's really important to get people into the party who have some cultural relevance and have an understanding of how to do messaging and talk to other people about libertarianism. And we need to flood the party with those people.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have been, as an organization at the national level, sort of making them, just kicking them out, making them feel very unwelcome, being hostile to them.
Right.
So we've definitely got to change that.
Yeah, when I first started getting into libertarian messaging at all back in the early days, which is like, I don't know, 6 years ago. But it was people like Jason Stapleton and Eric July and stuff like that. People who were interesting and dynamic and exciting and actually seemed to have libertarian principles. And then I got digging a little deeper, and just this last year, I started to open my eyes more to the nastiness of not just the incorrectness of the others who are kind of running the show a lot of the time, it seems, but the nastiness and the ways that they cut people down. It's disturbing. It almost seems intentional. Do you buy into the CIA stuff of Nick Sarwark, or do you not?
Oh, maybe a little bit. I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% convinced of it, but I think that there's anecdotal evidence. There's WikiLeaks, so I'm open-minded on that. It's
Right.
definitely a very toxic culture, though. I believe after the 2016 election was over, Judd Weiss said that the Libertarian Party was like a dog kennel where you put the worst of the liberty activists, and that's where they go, and they have to be held off in this dog kennel so that they don't infect the rest of the liberty movement.
Right.
And I think that's pretty accurate sometimes. You're right. It's a nasty place. People are rude. Whenever anyone joins the party and they're brand new and they're excited, I have to tell them, okay, please don't join any Libertarian Party Facebook group. Stay out of all of them.
Yeah.
I'll explain it later, but just for now,
me.
just trust me and just don't do it.
You're going to have to get pretty calloused before you go venturing down that road.
Oh, it's horrifying.
Yeah, and it's I can only imagine how many people it's sent running, kicking, and screaming back to their own party when they're like, at least you guys don't yell at me. Like, we disagree, but at least you're not, like, calling me a Nazi or calling me even on the other side, calling me a communist. Like, the Mises Caucus, I like what I've seen from you guys. I've heard all the rumors, and I've talked to several people on this show, and I don't buy much of it, but I have seen some immaturity, to say the least, from some of the members, and that's what happens when you put people together. But do you have thoughts? Do you have words for those people who jump instantly to, oh, you're just a beta cuck soy boy and blah 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 because you think I don't know, the obvious things. It's at the very least cringe, and at the very worst toxic in some manners.
Yeah, I try to remind people to tone it down a little bit. I also try to remind people that the giant Mises Caucus Facebook group is not actually the dues-paying members of the organization.
Right.
There are
I know, 'cause
way more people. Right.
Yeah.
There are way more people in that group that are dedicated than there are dedicated Mises Caucus members. And it's something that we discuss sometimes, is how aggressively should we police decorum? And when we have people who are brand new, or they're considering joining and they're new to LP culture, they don't understand that we are trying to institute a decorum plank to change it. We have to be maybe a little bit generous with them early on. If someone is consistently verbally abusive, then they've got to go. Yeah. But we try to extend them a little bit of grace when they're new, maybe to our online community, because we want them to see, this is what we're trying to do. And you're not really you're not a part of this environment yet. You're brand new. You're used to just like screaming beta, soy boy, cuck at everyone. I get it. And you're probably very triggered by some crappy interactions you've had in the rest of the party, right? So tone it down a little bit, and then maybe, you'll stick around. Yeah. But I hear you, sometimes it's a little cringy.
It is. It's quite cringe, but again, it's both sides. It's just different words. It's the same thing, but just different labels. So, it would just be great if there's like the Democratic Party. You've got Bernie Sanders, who bent over and took it multiple times. I'm not saying that we should have people in the mindset of bend over and take it if you disagree with the person, but at least, if you disagree with somebody, point out why you're disagreeing with them, and don't do whatever this is, where it's just back and forth name calling the whole time. But
and I think that's a product of internet culture too. I mean, it exists independent of the Mises Caucus. It exists in every tribalized group. Like, people, it's just so much easier to scream an insult at someone through your keyboard than it is to someone's face.
Right.
There's actually, people will yell stuff during convention business at the national convention, but you don't really see anyone get up in someone else's face.
Right.
That might happen 2 or 3 times the whole convention, and it's like a big deal. It's not constant.
Yeah, absolutely. So back on some of the like issues of the day. Aside from the obvious things, the BLM stuff and the COVID and that type of thing, are there things that you don't typically talk about that are important to you that are just like not in the main zeitgeist right now of discussion that you feel would be worth bringing to the table?
Well, there's a lot of organizational stuff that needs to change. There are things besides messaging.
Yeah.
Messaging is the biggest thing to me because it's the first thing that people encounter when they look up the Libertarian Party.
Right.
They'll go they just Google Libertarian Party. They don't look at your state party or your county, and then the first thing that pops up is lp.org, Libertarian Party Twitter, and that's where, I'm just mortified.
Yeah.
But aside from that, we do have some organizational problems. We exhaust the same 5 major donors every year. That's not really good. We should have more than that. Yeah. The chair of the party is unpaid. That's not good. I don't expect that I'm going to get
the future chair, of course.
Right.
Like, if I'm going in there, I'm getting paid. That's going to be the first thing I change. Day 1, executive order.
I hope that the person who comes after me will get paid.
Yeah.
I expect to go in there and leave like the bitter ex-girlfriend who fixed up a man, and got fed up with him and broke it off. And then later he's like, I see the light, and the woman who comes after him gets all the benefit. So
right. Not only that, but
he
gets all jealous because she left, and he starts working out and improving himself even more, trying to impress his former.
Yes.
Yeah.
So LP National will get sober and go to the gym after I'm done being the chair.
I don't know if the LP National should get sober. I think that would be a little off-brand.
That might be. Okay. So maybe they'll quit drinking, but they'll keep doing psychedelics. That would be very on brand,
Perfect.
I think.
Perfect. And probably beneficial too, if some of these guys just shut the fuck out.
So, I don't know if you've heard that we have a paper newsletter. I don't know. Have you ever received the newsletter in the mail?
I've received it far too many times.
Yeah, it's over $20,000 a year.
Holy shit.
I think it's closer to 25. It might be 24,000.
Fiscally conservative?
Guess who gets that newsletter? Only members. So I'm not really sure, I don't think that's a good part of messaging. We're not spreading the word. We're not proselytizing to the masses with our glorious newsletter that's on newsprint and kind of ugly.
To anybody out there who's getting these newsletters, I'm curious, is that what's keeping you in your membership? Is there anybody out there that would bail from the party? Send me an email if you would, because I have a hunch that it's not doing too much with that $20,000.
Right. So let's get rid of that, and then we'll have a little bit of a bigger budget.
Yeah.
There's a problem with this thing called the Frontier Project that is headed up by Apollo Pizzell. Funding on that is really tight. Mm-hmm. Apollo trains candidates and actually gets them elected. So I think that Apollo's project is really important. He actually gets people elected. He doesn't just run campaigns and then brag about losing, which is another problem in the LP. We have like loser mentality. We spend way more time focusing on the people who lost than people who actually won. So people always think like, oh, you're perennial losers. And I'm like, well, actually, we have like over 200 people elected in office, but you're right. We never talk about that.
Yes, we've never been president.
All needs to change.
We've never been president, so there's nothing we can possibly do.
Right. All of that needs to change.
Yeah.
Oh, there are so many other things. I believe this year they're trying to institute an org chart for the first time ever in 50 years of the party. We're going to finally have an organizational chart. Mm-hmm. And that was done after gutting some really important parts of the party, like the membership director. So now we don't have a membership director. It's just, the membership director was important and she did a good job. Her name was Jess Mears.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So she's gone.
What was their
big mess
reasoning, if it's okay to say?
Changing the structure of the party was the reasoning. Now, I don't know that that's
bullshit.
actually why it was done. Yeah.
I don't buy that ever.
Yeah, I don't.
We were just
that's
getting rid
another
of positions. It's like, no, you just eliminated a position because you didn't want to own up to, your actual reasoning.
Right. So, that's another thing is we have the status quo element within the LP, and we have since, the mid 2000s, maybe the early 2000s. That's super gross. It's like the same, like, Libertarian Party elite that controls everything, and they just like recycle their friends through, and they get really excited and cheer when no one else gets on any committees. It's just gross.
Yeah.
It's just gross. Like, I'm sure that people probably wonder, is Angela going to put in only Mises Caucus people on committees? No, I'm going to put in people who are competent and good at doing their jobs.
Right.
If a lot of them are Mises Caucus, great, but there are plenty of other people who are really good at what they do that we could use help from. Okay, so you're not a Mises Caucus member. You're very good at messaging. These are like the obvious things that we should consider. But unfortunately, stuff like that doesn't get considered at the national level right now, because it just doesn't fit within the paradigm of maintaining tight control within like this like Prague status quo alliance. Ugh.
Yeah.
So we need to change that. Got to change it.
It's like we've been LARPing for politics for years, it seems like. And I got into libertarianism because it was like the anti-politics. I mean, it is still playing within the system to some degree, but it's saying this whole thing, like the title, "The System is Down" of this show is because that's what we're all about. It's like this thing is completely fucked. Like it doesn't work. And we should be, I listened to your interview with, on PQ, whatever his last name is, show. I can never say it right, but, you said something to the effect of the LP's role should be to be, what was it?
A shit-talking prophet.
That's the one. Yes, I loved that, because we're not going to win the presidency. We're
right.
99% not. You have a better chance of dying of COVID than you do winning the presidency as a libertarian. So what is your can you explain that a little bit further on the shitposting philosopher or whatever you said?
Shit-talking prophet. So you're not going to win the presidency begging and pleading for people's approval and telling them, we're just like you. We want the same things. We just want to go about them slightly differently.
Yeah.
So we've tried that. Failed experiment.
Yeah.
Why not tell people the brutal, honest, open truth? Why not tell people this is what's happening when you do this policy? This is what's happening. That's what's happening. This is what's going to happen if you vote this way. If you vote for this guy, if you vote for Joe Biden, you're going to have even more kids in cages.
Right.
All those things that you hate, I guarantee you they'll come to fruition and they'll be even worse. Why can't we just say that instead of congratulating Kamala Harris on being the first No, don't congratulate any of those bloodthirsty monsters.
Yeah.
We just have to stop doing that. Like, we have to stop begging for people to like us by, like, do we really mean that? Do we really want to congratulate? I don't mean it. If I were to say that, I wouldn't mean it. So we need to speak the truth, right? And that's what a prophet does. And we need to speak it aggressively, hence the shit talking.
Absolutely. And I had a point and it left because the Kratom's not working. If you want somebody to blame, go to My Brave Botanicals or freeounceofkratom.com and tell them it's not working. But no, so with the way things are, we're kind of just, it seems like, a few years back when Gary Johnson, Bill Weld ran, that was more like pandering to the right a little bit. And now we're kind of pandering to the left because that's more popular. And we just kind of grift with the wind. I don't understand the value in that personally, because there's already a party saying those things and they're winning. So what do you suggest?
Just got to speak libertarianism. You just got to be bold and go straight for it. You don't ever have to, we don't have to be such an obsessive counterpoint to everything.
Yeah.
Oh, these guys are saying this, but we're the opposite of that. That's not a healthy way to approach messaging. We just need to be solid and on point. And in order to do that, of course, we have to have really good messengers. And that's not something that we've historically had either. I mean, we have in the past, but it's been many years. I would say Harry Brown was the last really great presidential candidate we had.
Mm-hmm. What was I wasn't around at the time, but I've heard good things. I haven't done much research on him, but what was the difference between Harry Brown and, you know, even Joe Jorgensen right now?
Trying to think if I can remember any of Harry Brown's quotes, and I can't think of any of them on the spot, but Harry Brown didn't pander to people.
Yeah.
And I think that
he's
that's
the one who had
something we
the
need to
statement about 9/11 the day after, right? Was
Yeah.
that him? Okay.
We need to stop pandering. That would be really great.
Yeah. I tend to agree. And like, I'm not going to knock on the Jorgensen campaign or anything. It is what it is, and we all got what we deserve, which is nobody's first choice. No offense. She's a great lady. I've got nothing against her. She's very nice, and she'd make a great grandma, but she said, you know, if you don't believe in a candidate, don't vote for him. And now we have people getting mad at Dave Smith for having not voted for her. So
Right.
Explain. Do you think that a libertarian is wrong to not go the Bernie Sanders route and be a team player?
I don't. And there were a lot of people who were not just, you know, Dave Smith and the Mises Caucus who didn't vote for her.
Yeah.
There were people who had started volunteering on her campaign and were burned out and, you know, felt burned for personal reasons, and they didn't vote for her. There are all kinds of reasons that people didn't vote for Joe Jorgensen. And that's totally within their right.
I didn't vote
it's
for
very
her.
There you go. See?
Yep.
See, you don't get your libertarian card revoked because you didn't vote for the presidential
Right.
candidate.
I didn't vote for any of the other two
works.
either, to be clear. I wrote in. I figure, you know, it's a protest vote either way. Like, if the Libertarian
Right.
Party, they are the ones who say, you know, it's a protest vote. You should, you know, speak with your vote. And if I'm protesting and I see something within the party, I might be protesting that as well if I don't believe in it and if I don't think that she would be fit to lead the country. And frankly, I don't.
There you go. There were a lot of people who wrote in Vermin. There were people who wrote in Jacob Hornberger. There were people who wrote in Adam Kokesh and Ron Paul and Kermit the Frog or whatever. Like, that's just, it happens.
Yeah.
You know.
I have gotten at least one vote on a presidential ballot. So
well done. I believe I got 2 votes last cycle. It's very exciting.
Congratulations. So now, as far as like the chair position, we had Nick Sarwark forever, and he had his moments, which you can address some of those if you'd like to. Now we've got JBH in there, Joe Bishop Henchman, and he's been quieter. At least I don't really know his stance on some things, which in some ways is better. In some ways, I'm not sure if it's better. What do you think? Do you think that the chairperson should be outspoken and putting their personal opinion out there a lot, or should it be more behind the scenes position?
I think the chair needs to be outspoken. You're basically the face of the party. We don't get the same opportunities that other parties have to put forward a lot of people who could potentially be the face of the party. We don't have as many high-profile candidates.
Yeah.
So it's the chair. The chair needs to be out there. And I do think that you also need to be accessible. I think that you need to probably reflect libertarian values and
yes, preferably
some of the larger sentiments of the LP, like speaking out against lockdowns and speaking out against mandatory vaccine passports and that kind of stuff. So that's what I think part of the role of the chair should be.
Absolutely. Between the two, between Sarwark and Bishop Henchman, do you say that they should be outspoken? Would you prefer somebody who's not outspoken over somebody who's outspoken and a dick? Or do you think it's better to be outspoken and let everybody know that you're a dick?
Well, I'm not even upset about the being a dick part. I'm upset about the not libertarian part.
Right. Attacking people within the party who are making the most waves for liberty. Yeah.
Yeah, that's atrocious.
Yeah.
And if I have to choose between those two, I'd rather have someone be silent. I mean, at least you're doing less damage. I definitely don't hope that we get an outspoken person going after Ron Paul and Tom Woods ever again. That's so embarrassing. I'm just embarrassed. I'm embarrassed when people see that. I'm embarrassed for the person who did that, regardless of whatever ego and hubris he has. I'm just like, I'm embarrassed for you.
Now, we've addressed a lot of those things with some of the other guests, some of the rumors and stuff, but this, I don't know, this attacking of ourselves because, like, especially the attacking of the guy who brought in more people into the liberty movement than anybody ever has and possibly ever will, Ron Paul. What's the deal? Like, there's the, you know, the, I don't know, the articles or whatever that had racist connotations or something like that. But for people who aren't familiar, what's your take on all that?
Oh, well, there's a couple of things, right? And they all sort of intersect. Intersectional failure, maybe that's a good term for it. We have the people who came into libertarianism by chasing the left culture. They've decided that they don't want to be Democrats anymore, but they don't want to be Republicans, so they'll be libertarians. But really, they're probably Democrats. So we've got these people who are triggered by anything that seems slightly conservative. And we've got the Libertarian Party, which for the last few years has been chasing the culture of left, just reaffirming people's decisions to hate anything that might come out as remotely conservative.
Yeah.
And then we've got this sort of autistic screeching of thinking that no one else is a real libertarian except you.
Yeah.
And that is a really unhealthy behavior, but it is something that is very common in the LP. It's a huge part of Libertarian Party culture is to say that no one else is as good of a libertarian as you. I get that it's in the broader liberty movement as well, but its pinnacle is within the LP. And it's really out of touch with reality. It's really out of touch with reality. And then you find that people become so insulated within LP culture that they don't really interact with libertarians outside of it, that they just become even more out of touch.
Yeah.
I think that's my messy way of explaining it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know, but even if something happened, even if he posted something bad, even if he personally posted something bad, if he has apologized for it, not made the same issues, not like flagrantly, you know, continued doing the same thing, even if it was Ron Paul himself, at what point do you say, okay, well, we've moved past that? Like, and this isn't obviously a question for you. I know you disagree, but to the rest of you, when's the point that you give up everything that somebody said like 10 years ago, 15 years ago? Because that's all this is like digging up everything that we can possibly find on Twitter from God knows when and pretending like it's, you know, something to throw out there and burn the party down, it seems like. But
yeah, it's libertarians engaging in cancel culture, which is really, really gross.
Yeah.
You know, and the pushback to that would probably be, well, that's just the free market. And I think, no, I don't actually think that it's normal free market behavior to scrutinize and obsessively look for something that someone did 10 years ago that you disagree with, especially when there have been a lot of explanations for it. This is the part where it becomes cancel culture and not free market. You're no longer saying, okay, I believe that, or I'm glad that that changed, let's move on. You're saying, no, it doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter what explanation it is, what staffer did it, and whether or not they get fired. We want to burn you down. Yeah. That's not libertarian. That's really gross.
You know what this mentality kind of sounds a lot like? It sounds a lot like conspiracy theorists, you know. The thing that they throw around at the other side. And I am a conspiracy theorist, so it's fine. I wear it proudly because I don't trust the government, turns out. But and that's all it takes these days to become that. But when you've got these people who are like looking for Nazism behind every rock and tree and saying like burning their own party down and their own country down in an attempt to find a Nazi, it's like you're paranoid, man. It would be a lot more obvious to everyone if there was Nazis around as much as you say. And if there are as many Nazis as you say in the party or in the country, why are you still here? I would not want to be in a position of power in a party full of Nazis. So
it's so weird. Yeah, I get called a Nazi and an anti-Semite and a fascist. And then I'm like, why? Why? And they're like, because you talked to someone. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, I look up what that person said, and I'm like, okay, but they're not a Nazi. They made like a joke or a crass comment that offended you.
Right.
And they're like, well, then you're a Nazi. And it's just like, this is the most absurd. What would these people do in Nazi Germany? What would have happened in actual Nazi Germany?
Right. And you brought up Jordan Peterson at the beginning of our conversation here, and that's enough. You quoting Jordan Peterson is enough today to be labeled a Nazi. Like they made the Red Skull comic, the Captain America thing, where it's Jordan Peterson essentially, and it's like, have we really like depreciated words, the value of words, so lowly that you disagreeing with me makes me a literal Nazi just for you, like somebody who, I don't know, doesn't or thinks that you should have to present an ID to vote. That's enough to make you a Nazi. It's like, okay, if you go back and look at history, if you believe in the Holocaust and you're not a crazy conspiracy theorist, they were a little bit worse than saying you need ID to vote.
Hail lobster. Hail lobster. You know, the voter ID thing is so fascinating too, because if you want to do almost anything, you know, like a credit card transaction, you need an ID. Yeah. There are a lot of things that you need an ID for that you don't need a credit card for. So I just think it's a really weird, random thing to obsess over. Yeah. Needing, you know, calling ID like a Nazi dog whistle. I don't get it.
Especially when they're pushing for COVID passports. And I know that the ID thing is more about racism and blah, 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 than it is about Nazism. But they're calling for these COVID passports, which are going to be apps on phones, assuming that black people don't know how to get photo IDs of themselves issued by the state, often for free. We're going to assume that they're going to have a cell phone that can have an app and be, you know, readily available when it needs to be presented at like everywhere, not just when you're going to vote, everywhere. That's okay, but not this one thing.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely the bigotry of low expectations. Talking about black people like they don't know how to get an ID. Yes. I don't think that that's what most black people would say if you asked them. I mean, when I talk to black people, it seems like most of them have a driver's license and understand how to get one if they don't. Right. Yeah. Or what about a school ID or a military ID? By the way, it's not just driver's license. Like there's a plethora of IDs that you can get. Right. And most likely, if you can get to the polling place, you can probably get to the DMV. But speaking of like, you know, identity politics and such, is there any thought in your mind of, the Mises Caucus? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, and what some people I'm sure are assuming, the Mises Caucus chose a woman this time because they didn't want that douchebag Josh Smith making them be the misogynist caucus anymore. So this will, the same reason I think some people voted for Joe Jorgensen because of the identity stuff. Is there any bit of that in there that you see? No, in fact, I think this is the first time anyone's asked me about that. I have been. I'm the only misogynist asshole. That's fine. That's okay. That's okay. I enjoy your mansplaining. I was a very early caucus member. I was one of the first people on board. I've got, you know, the original Mises Caucus polo shirt that was passed out in 2018. Nice. I'm on the board. And I had several chats with Michael Heiss about whether or not I should run, you know, before I announced. And it was really just a discussion about who's the most qualified. Yeah. And I've already, you know, I've been secretary for the largest state party in the country, which is a huge undertaking. So I understand how that sort of thing works. I'm on the executive committee for the largest state party, and I run the largest county. LA County is, I think, the 9th largest affiliate in the country. We have more members than most state parties do. I've chaired really contentious conventions. I've managed to get a convention in person going when everything was locked down. And, you know, I can run a meeting, and I am very good at delegating, and, you know, I inherited a county party that was an absolute disaster and turned it into a functional organization. So it was really just, Angela seems like she's the best suited for the job. Will you announce? That's really what it came down to.
Awesome. Love it. And are you on board with the whole Dave Smith running thing as well?
I am right now. I think that so far from what I've seen, Dave is the best messenger. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think that we would see tremendous growth in our party too. And I do actually think that we would get a pretty good vote turnout if he ran. Mm-hmm. I think that people would feel a lot differently about a Dave Smith campaign than they did Joe Jorgensen campaign. We really need someone speaking the truth. I will say that sometimes people think that the chair of an organization isn't allowed to have an opinion on that. And I disagree, because I want to be someone who is very transparent and open and honest about what I'm thinking and what my intentions are.
Yeah.
So what I'm thinking is that Dave Smith is the best candidate I've seen for the job. And my intentions will be to support whoever gets the nomination. So if it's Justin Amash, if it's Spike, if it's whoever, I'm not going to try to pull some sour grapes behind the scene nonsense like a lot of people thought happened in 2020.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I think is best for the organization, and I'll be very transparent about it. That's another change that we need to see in the Libertarian Party culture.
Yeah. Now, do you mean you will support them as in you will push them to be the best that they can be and you will help their campaign, or do you mean they will have your vote if they are the LP choice?
Well, they'll probably have my vote. I voted for Joe Jorgensen, and I wasn't happy with a lot of the stuff she did, but I did vote for her. I was pretty open about it. Yeah, I would vote for Justin Amash. I'd vote for Spike. I'd vote for a lot of the other guys that we really tout in the Mises caucus. You know, Tom Woods is not going to run, but if he ran, I'd vote for him.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of who else is, I'd vote. When we start talking about recycled Republicans, then I'm like,
right.
I don't know. Let's wait and see. But most of the people who are being touted right now as potential candidates, I'd absolutely vote for. And I'd give them my blessing, and I'd make sure that they got as much support as they possibly could from the National Party.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, we dog on Joe a little bit, and we dog on the system of the LP politics a little bit. But as far as like the candidates for the presidential race, I wasn't into it until 2016. Gary Johnson was the first time I voted Libertarian, and then this whole last year thing. But like all these candidates, we can scrutinize them all day long, but save for a couple undesirables, they're all fantastic in their own way. They all have their own great stuff. So that was something that I would personally love to see more of. Like when I got into the libertarian stuff in 2016, one thing that really stood out to me and that I would like to see more of is when they're doing the debates, they'll often be like, okay, well, what is something that you like about your other candidates, or like trying to actually build each other up instead of tearing each other down. I saw some more of the behind the scenes stuff and some of the ugly stuff that goes on, but like that's showing that libertarians are more real and more understanding, and that this isn't just a big game that we're playing, is super invaluable in my opinion, and will make people stick. That's what made me stick, is seeing the difference between, because I jumped out of the Republicans when I saw Trump coming in, and Trump got me interested. I was like, let's watch this shit show. But then I was like, I'm not a Republican. I'm definitely not that either. And then seeing the difference, I watched all the debates, and I don't know. I'm rambling, but seeing people like be able to unify and actually point out what each other are doing well, rather than this game that we've been playing, I think is what we need more of.
I completely agree. I would really like to see in our next election cycle the presidential and vice presidential candidate work more closely together and build each other up.
Together.
Well, yeah.
I kid. They were together a few times. But anyway, we are pushing about an hour. So I'm going to let you leave. But before you do, I am curious, what would you say to two messagings two like elevator pitches or Twitter posts or what have you. One for the Libertarian Party as it stands today going in, like your overall elevator pitch, and one for people outside of the party.
I think, okay, so for the people inside of the party, we have a chance to turn this organization into something really incredible, and it's desperately needed right now. We have government tyranny just really about to rip out our throats. So let's band together and let's make this the best organization that we possibly can, and let's try to hold on to what little rights we have and maybe even take some of them back. For people who are on the outside of the party and they're thinking about joining, we need you to help make this possible. We need you to become delegates for the 2022 convention in Reno so that we can get good people voted into the executive committee and, put out a bombastic, unapologetic fight for freedom and use this really incredible, this vehicle that we have to achieve liberty.
Shit talking profits. I like it. So let everybody know where they can find all the information about you, your campaign, everything you got going on.
Absolutely. So you can find out about me at angelamcardle.com. There is a link to my Patreon account there and PayPal if you'd like to help me travel to more state conventions this year. Right now I'm traveling to 7 or 8, and I have pledged that if I reach 2K on Patreon, I will chair LP National full time. And that would be the first that we've had in quite a while.
Awesome. Well, Angela, thank you so much for being here. It's a blast, and I really look forward to seeing your campaign. Look forward to seeing you out there on the campaign trail. But thank you, and I look forward to having you again in the future.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Hey guys, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe on your way out and help us change the world one uncomfortable conversation at a time. And if you like what you hear and you want to hear more, go join the Downers Club at patreon.com/thesystemsdown for bonus episodes of the show every single week. Until next time, please continue to question everything, stay uncomfortable, and I'll talk to you then. Thanks.
This has been a Goulash Media production. goulashmedia.net.
This concludes our broadcast day. Click.